He was born in the First Age in Beleriand, in the realm of Doriath. He would go on to fight with the last alliance of elves and men at the end of the Second Age against the Dark Lord Sauron. He would also play a pivotal part in the Battle of Five Armies by aiding the dwarves and men. What's up, everybody? And today on the Petty Lords, we are gonna dive into the life of the Elven King Thranduil. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe if you're digging the art of lore and stories, as we will be covering many more characters, locations, and battle from the wonderful world of Tolkien. And real quick, we would like to give a quick shout out to my wife, Jamie, for this video suggestion, as this is one of her favorite characters from the stories. Thank you, honey, for everything you do for us. Although he doesn't really come into the story much until the late Second Age, he was born in Beleriand in the First Age in the realm of Doriath. We don't have an exact date, but it is around the year of 506. He was the son of Orifer, and his name means vigorous spring. Thranduil and his father both being of the Sindar elves. The Sindar elves were among the firstborn elves, but they never managed to go into the west, instead choosing to dwell in Beleriand, and they founded the realm of Doriath. In 502 of the First Age, King Thingol is killed by the dwarves of Nogrod over a dispute of the Nauglamir, a magnificent necklace that was made by the dwarves, but held the Cimmeril of Beren and Luthien that was taken from Morgoth's crown years earlier. After Thingol's death, his Queen Melian the Maya, departs Middle-earth, which causes her protective barrier around Doriath to disappear. Soon after, in 507, Doriath is completely destroyed in the Second Kinslaying, an attack of elves against elves, led by the sons of Feanor in an attempt to recover the Cimmeril. Soon after Beleriand is destroyed in the War of Wrath, most of the Noldor and Sindar elves go to Lindon. After this relocation of the elves, the Valar invite these elves to travel west to Valinor. Most of the Sindar, including Orifer and Thranduil, do not take the invitation and instead head eastward toward the area of Rhovanion, specifically Greenwood the Great, and arrive sometime around 750 of the Second Age. The Sylvan elves that live in Greenwood accept Orifer as king, and Sylvan and Sindar elves live as one in the area in peace. Originally, Orifer's realm encompasses the entire forest, including the capital of Amon Lok, later to be known as Dol Guldur. Later in the Second Age, Orifer chooses to move northward past the Gladden Fields due to the increase in activity of the dwarves of Khazad-dûm in the region, and also due to what he considered an intrusion of his realm with Galadriel and Celeborn coming into Lothlorien. Eventually, they settle in the Dark Mountains in the north of Greenwood. Although Orifer wishes to be left alone and return to a more simple life, he knows that if left unchecked, Sauron would go on to cause much destruction in the land. It is at this realization Orifer and his son Thranduil choose to join with King Amdir of Lorien, and their small armies combine to create a large host of Sylvan elves. Although not armed as well as the Noldor elves of Gil-galad, the Sylvan elves make up for it in strength and bravery. They refuse to submit to the lead of the High King Gil-galad in the beginning days of the assault on Mordor. And at this refusal, Orifer and Amdir's armies attack before Gil-galad gives the signal, and they attack prematurely. They suffer heavy losses to Sauron's forces in this first assault. Orifer is unfortunately killed, and King Amdir is driven into the marshlands of the northeast of the region. When cornered in the marshlands, half of the host is killed by the orcs, and due to the massive amount of death in the marshlands, these lands become known as the Dead Marshes, the very same marshes that are crossed years later by Frodo, Samwise, and Gollum on their quest to destroy the One Ring. After 7 long years of battles and assaults, the last alliance is victorious, and Sauron is thrown down at last. As the survivors of the Free Peoples return to their realms, Thranduil, now king in his father's death, leads the remains of Greenwood's forces home. Thranduil's reign begins upon the return to their home as the beginning of the Third Age commences. After roughly around 1,000 years of a peaceful and prosperous reign, around the year of 1050 of the Third Age, the south of the realm of Greenwood becomes increasingly dangerous because Sauron returns in the form of the Necromancer and inhabits the old capital of Greenwood, Amon Lanc, now to be known as Dol Guldur, the Hill of Sorcery. After Sauron's inhabitants of Dol Guldur, evil and foul creatures come to plague the forest, and it is then known henceforth as Mirkwood. Thranduil moves his people even further north, and they construct their halls underground, much in the same fashion of Thranduil's First Age home of Menegroth in the realm of Doriath. In 2063 of the Third Age, the wizard Gandalf suspects evil in the forest and goes to investigate Dol Guldur himself. Sauron flees before the wizard as he is not yet ready for his reveal. This, in turn, is the beginning of the era known as the Watchful Peace. Almost 400 years later, in the year of 2460, Sauron returns yet again to Dol Guldur to continue his work. After much more time in Dol Guldur, in 2941, the White Council confers and attacks Dol Guldur and expels Sauron from the fortress. In the same year, Thranduil and his people are in their forest merrymaking and having a feast when they are disturbed by a company of dwarves and a particular hobbit. They catch the company leader, none other than Thorin Oakenshield, and they imprison him. After the rest of the dwarven company has fought and killed the spiders that ambushed them in the forest, they are also caught by the elves and imprisoned. Even after being imprisoned, none of the dwarves would reveal the truth of their quest to Thranduil. Of course, this certain hobbit, known as Bilbo Baggins, springs the dwarves from the elven prison with the help of his newfound ring, and they make their way out of the elven realm to Lake Town. Thranduil then receives news from his scouts that the dwarves have gathered supplies in Lake Town and are now making their way towards Erebor, the Lonely Mountain. Thranduil now understands the true meaning of Thorin's quest and states to his people,
"No treasure will come back through Mirkwood without my having a say in the matter. But I expect they will all come to a bad end, and serve them right."
Believing that the dragon Smaug would make quick work of the dwarves, he soon receives word that the dragon has been slain. Thinking that the dwarves are dead, and desiring some of the treasure hoarded in the mountain, the king leads a company of elves towards the Lonely Mountain along the way. Thranduil is met by messengers from Bard of Lake Town requesting aid from Smaug's attack. Not only does Thranduil give help, but also leaves a company of elven craftsmen to help build shelter and huts for the people of Lake Town. On November 9th, 2941 of the Third Age, Thranduil and Bard combine forces and march on the Lonely Mountain, thinking the dwarves are dead, but indeed the dwarves have survived, and they meet Thranduil and Bard at the gate. At the gate of the mountain, Bard the Dragon Slayer approaches the gate, only to have an arrow shot at his feet, and a warning called to him from the new king under the mountain. Thorin, son of Thrain, son of Thror, says, "I will not parley as I have said with armed men at my gates. nor at all with the people of the Elven King, whom I remember with small kindness. In this debate they have no place. Begone now, ere arrows fly. And if you would speak with me again, first dismiss this elvish host to the woods where it belongs, and then return, laying down your arms before you approach the threshold of the king under the mountain. At this response, Bard and Thranduil besiege the mountain. Thorin then sends words to his cousin Dane Ironfoot via Raven Messenger to the Iron Hills, requesting aid, for they have won Erebor back and now seek to defend it from all. Shortly after these events, on the day of November 21st, 2941, the hobbit Bilbo Baggins sneaks away from the dwarves after he accepts the midnight watch from one of his dwarven comrades and makes his way to the camp of King Thranduil. Upon his arrival, he shares a plan, along with an incredible artifact. He presents Thranduil and Bard with the Arkenstone, the heart of the Lonely Mountain itself, as he did take it as his 1/14th share of the treasure hoard of Thror. And his plan, he states that he will give Thranduil the Arkenstone in exchange for peace, stating that Thorin values this stone above all else, and will give the elves and men their share of the promised treasure of Erebor, newly liberated by Bard the Dragon Slayer and his trusty Black Arrow. At this point, Thranduil is amazed at the hobbit's resolve for peace and says to Bilbo,
Bilbo Baggins, you are more worthy to wear the armor of elf princes than many that have looked more comely in it. But I wonder if Thorin Oakenshield will see it so. I have more knowledge of dwarves in general than you, perhaps. I advise you to remain with us, and here you shall be honored and thrice welcome.
Despite his welcome from the men and the elves, Bilbo returns to his dwarven friends inside the mountain and prepares for the morning. The following day, Thorin, Bard, and Thranduil meet at the Great Gate of Erebor, and after a set of informational events, Thorin agrees to the terms of Thranduil and Bard and says that he will give a 14th share of the treasure in return for the Arkenstone, and at the same time expels Bilbo from his company, and the hobbit returns to Gandalf, Thranduil, and Bard. Even though this deal was struck, the next day following the parley, Dane Ironfoot had arrived from the Iron Hills to reinforce his cousin Thorin for the upcoming fight. Before the trade for the Arkenstone can take place, the armies of elves and men battle with the dwarven reinforcements. But yet again, shortly after this battle commences, Sauron's forces of orcs, wargs, goblins, and bats converge on the mountain. And it is after this particular event, Gandalf convinces Thranduil, Bard, Dane Ironfoot, and Thorin alike to join forces against these dark forces, and thus the Battle of the Five Armies commences. After the battle rages on for some time, the allied forces of elves, men, and dwarves are almost overrun when from the skies, Beorn, the Skin Changer, arrives with a host of eagles to reinforce the elves, men, and dwarves. It is during this fight that King Thorin is mortally wounded, and Beorn, in great bear form, tears through the orc ranks and saves the king and rushes him from the battle. As King Thranduil takes control of the battlefield, and along with Bard and his men, they defeat the orcs and make safe Erebor and Dale. Despite being saved from the battle by Beorn, King Thorin dies after having one last conversation with his friend, Bilbo Baggins. A few days after the battle, King Thorin Oakenshield, along with his sister sons, Kili and Fili, are laid to rest inside the mountain. After the funeral, Thranduil places the great elven sword Orcrist, the sword that was found by Thorin on his journey, upon Thorin's tomb, to lay by the slain king, and there the sword would lie, and help to provide a warning for the dwarves of Erebor by glowing blue when any evil or enemy would approach their mountain. Dane Ironfoot succeeds his cousin Thorin as king under the mountain and honors Thorin's agreement and divides the treasure amongst the alliance. Bard, after this battle, now king of Dale, gifts to Thranduil the Emeralds of Girion, the very jewels that belonged to Bard's ancestor Girion, who failed to destroy Smaug the day he came to the city of Dale. Also, along with these emeralds, Bilbo also gifts Thranduil a necklace of gems and pearls as a token of friendship and good faith for enjoying his wine and food for some time. Thranduil, in return, bestows Bilbo the title of Elf Friend. Thranduil then leads the remains of his army back to Greenwood the Great. Much later in the Third Age, on March 21st, 3018, Aragorn arrives with the creature Gollum to Greenwood, where he asks Thranduil to keep the creature imprisoned. After the interrogation of Gollum by Gandalf and Aragorn, Greenwood is attacked by a group of orcs, whose purpose is to create a distraction so that Gollum could escape before Gandalf discovers what the creature knows. The orcs are successful in this endeavor, and Gollum does indeed escape the Woodland Realm. After this attack, Thranduil sends his son Legolas to Rivendell to inform Lord Elrond of Gollum's escape. As chance would have it, Legolas arrives in Rivendell just in time to take part in the Council of Elrond, the very council that would decide the fate of the One Ring of Sauron. Legolas then is selected to represent his race in the Fellowship of the Ring and help guide the One Ring to Mordor to be destroyed. Almost a year later, after the Council of Elrond, on March 15, 3019, Gondor is victorious in the Battle of Pelennor Fields against the Witch King and his forces. And on that same day, Sauron also sends a force of orcs to attack Thranduil and the Woodland Realm. After this great battle and much damage to Greenwood, Thranduil and his army defeat the orcs and kill most of the force and drive the remaining orcs from the forest. 10 days after this battle, on March 25th, Frodo destroys the One Ring at Mount Doom, and Sauron is finally defeated. 3 days after the ring is destroyed, on March 28th, 3019, Celeborn and Galadriel destroy Dol Guldur and eliminate the remaining orcs in the forest region. Shortly after, on April 6, 3019, Thranduil meets Celeborn in the forest and renamed the forest Eren Lasgalen, meaning Wood of Green Leaves. They then divide the forest in 3 pieces, Thranduil ruling over the north, Celeborn ruling the southern region and naming it East Lorien, and the middle region was gifted to Beorn and the Beornings for the help they gave in past battles. After this great truce of the forest, we unfortunately do not know how Thranduil's story ends. We can assume that he goes on to rule the Woodland Realm for some time into the Fourth Age. We also never do find out if Thranduil decides to ever go to Valinor or if he chooses to stay in Middle-earth. But we do know that because his son Legolas befriends the dwarf Gimli during the War of the Ring and their friendship grows, that by watching this, Thranduil himself helps to rebuild the bonds between the people of the dwarves after many long years of strife. After the War of the Ring, we do know that Thranduil sends his son Legolas and a group of elves, who in turn are accompanied by Gimli and a group of dwarves from his new realm of Aglarond. And they head to Minas Tirith to help rebuild the once great city of men after the destruction of the war. And that is where King Thranduil's tale ends in this great story. Do you wish that more was known about this great elf? As one of our personal favorites, we can say we do, but as we dive deeper and deeper into these great tales, we find ourselves saying that more and more about each character we meet. As always, we want to say thank you so much to everyone for tuning in and watching this episode of The Petty Lords. Again, if you're digging the Arda and Middle-earth lore, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to the channel for more character breakdowns, locations, battles, stories, and more from this wonderful world of Tolkien. And always remember, folks, we are not runic emperors, just the Petty Lords.